The starship Ardent hung in space like a rusty nail in a cosmic junkyard, bobbing along the gravitational seas of a colossal black hole. Captain Thalamos Vire stood on the bridge, scratching his stubbled chin as he surveyed the view. "Home sweet home, eh?" he muttered, voice thick with irony. "If your home's a collapsing star eating its own tail." His first officer, Reese Kellen, glanced up from the console, eyes barely visible under the tangled mop of hair. "It's a fixer-upper, Captain. Just needs a bit of elbow grease and maybe a divine intervention." "Well, we've got the elbow grease." "Divine interventions are on backorder," Thalamos replied, turning to the motley crew gathered around him. Each was a patchwork of humanity's worst traits sewn together with sheer stubbornness and duct tape. "This is it, folks," he announced, gesturing toward the vid-screen that displayed a field of derelict ships, half devoured by the black hole's insatiable maw. The Starship graveyard, last resting place of every idiot who thought they could outsmart a singularity. And yet here we are proving Darwin was an optimist. "Why do I get the feeling this isn't going to be as simple as you promised?" chimed in a voice from behind, a wiry engineer named Strix, who had the unfortunate habit of being right about everything that could go wrong. "Because it won't be," Thalamos replied. "But look on the bright side. At least we won't die of boredom," Strix snorted. "You say that like dying of boredom isn't preferable to dying of, everything else." The comms crackled to life with the dulcet tones of the ship's AI, Dorian, programmed with a personality as comforting as a tax audit. "Captain, might I remind you that any attempt to salvage technology from these derelicts must account for the gravitational distortions and potential hostilities from automated defense systems." Thalamos rolled his eyes. "Thank you, Dorian. Your optimism is duly noted. It's what I'm here for, sir," Dorian replied without a hint of irony. Reese leaned back in his seat, feet up on the control panel. "You ever wonder what kind of civilization leaves behind a fleet of spaceships next to a black hole? Or are we the only idiots who think this is a good idea? If by good idea you mean potential for catastrophic failure, then yes, we are the pioneers of poor decisions," Thalamos said, striding over to the main console. "But that's where the fun comes in." "Fun," Reese repeated. "That's one word for it." "Insanity's another. Let's not split hairs," Thalamos replied with a grin that was more teeth than warmth. "Besides, we've got a plan. We just need to execute a mind merge to access some ancient civilization's cheat codes." "Piece of cake." "Yeah, cake with arsenic icing," mumbled Strix. Thalamos glanced at the vid-screen again, the swirling mass of cosmic debris looking more like a funeral procession than a treasure trove. "All right, people, let's get to it." Dorian, fire up the mind merge interface. "Time to go spelunking in the skulls of long-dead geniuses." What could possibly go wrong? The crew shuffled to their stations, the air thick with an unspoken prayer that they'd return with their own brains intact. Overhead, the lights dimmed, and the hum of the ship shifted to a lower, ominous tone. "Oh, I love this part," Reese murmured, rubbing his hands together. "The anticipation, the risk, the chance that none of this will work and we'll die horribly." "You're such a ray of sunshine," Thalamos said, strapping into the mind-merged chair. "I keep you around for morale," Reese winked. "And for my stunning good looks." "Yes, that too," Thalamos said, with the enthusiasm one reserves for tax returns. Dorian's voice cut through the banter. Mind merge interface initialized. "Please align neural pathways and prepare for synchronization." Strix came up behind them, holding a bundle of wires that looked like the entrails of a robot cow. "All right, Captain. Time to plug you into the cosmic consciousness. Try not to fry your neurons, yeah, are you kidding?" "That's half the fun," Thalamos quipped, though his grip on the chair tightened. As the mind merge commenced, the bridge was bathed in a harsh, flickering glow, casting long shadows that danced like specters around them. Thalamos felt a familiar tug at his consciousness, like being drawn into the undertow of an ocean of thoughts not his own. "Here we go," he muttered, his voice a thin thread in the vastness of the merge. For a moment, all was silent. Then, without warning, a cacophony of voices erupted in his mind, alien, ancient, angry. It was like trying to listen to 1,000 arguments at once, each one in a language as dead as its speakers. Well, this is noisy, he thought, trying to sift through the chaos for anything resembling coherence. Captain, Reese's voice echoed across the neural link. Finding anything useful in there? Maybe a nice recipe for souffle or the secret to the universe. Not yet, Thalamos replied, wincing as a particularly angry thought screeched through his mind like nails on a chalkboard. But I'm starting to think whatever they left behind wasn't meant to be found. I told you this was a bad idea. Strix's voice chimed in, filled with the smug satisfaction of someone who's too often proved right. Thalamos pressed deeper, pushing through the mental maelstrom like a man wading through a swamp of ghosts. He caught glimpses of impossible technology, half-formed thoughts of weaponry that could rewrite the rules of reality, or at least give them a good edit. But something else lingered there too, lurking at the edges of his awareness, a presence that felt like a cold hand on the back of his neck. Dorian, he thought, directing his consciousness through the link. Do you sense that? The AI response was immediate. Yes, Captain. An unauthorized consciousness attempting to interface with the mind merge. I suggest immediate disconnection. Oh, a party crasher, Reese quipped. And here I thought we were exclusive. Thalamos hesitated, the allure of the knowledge tantalizingly close. But the cold presence was growing stronger, more insistent. All right, he thought reluctantly. Cut the link. We'll have to find another way. As Dorian severed the connection, the cacophony faded, leaving Thalamos gasping in the sudden silence of his own mind. He opened his eyes to find the crew staring at him with varying degrees of concern and amusement. Well, he said, struggling to keep his voice light. That was enlightening. Strix shook her head, the corners of her mouth twitching. You look like you've seen a ghost, or a really bad tax return. I feel like it too, Thalamos admitted, rubbing his temples. Seems like we've got more company out here than we bargained for. Reese crossed his arms, his usual smirk replaced with a rare frown. So what now, Captain? We just pack it in, head home, and chalk this up to a learning experience. Thalamos stared at the view screen, the black hole's relentless pull a constant reminder of what they'd come for. No, he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. We double down. We find another way. After all, we haven't tried blowing anything up yet. With that, the crew of the Ardent got back to work, each secretly hoping that they wouldn't be adding their ship to the cosmic collection outside. But then again, in a universe as vast and uncaring as this one, they'd learned to find solace in the fact that at least they were consistent in their poor life choices. The bridge of the Ardent hummed with a mix of tension and anticipation, much like a condemned man awaiting his last meal. Captain Thalamos Vire, ever the maestro of gallows humor, looked around at his crew, all of whom wore expressions that could be generously described as mildly concerned. Well, Thalamos said, breaking the silence, seems we've managed to poke the cosmic hornet's nest. Always nice to feel welcome. Reese Kellen, who never missed a chance for a sardonic quip, leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. Welcome indeed. Nothing says hospitality like a brain full of angry ghosts. Maybe they'll offer us some spectral hors d'oeuvres next. If we're lucky, it'll be something light and non-lethal, Strix added, her usual dourness tempered by a smirk. Thalamos gave a nod, the kind you might give a particularly amusing piece of gallows humor at your own funeral. All right, folks, we're going back in. But this time, let's avoid inviting any uninvited guests to the party. Strix, ever the harbinger of potential disaster, stepped forward, holding a data pad that might as well have been a list of everything that could go wrong. Again. Captain, I've recalibrated the mind merge interface. Should filter out most of the angry gibberish, Thalamos repeated, eyeing the contraption like one might eye a ticking bomb with a particularly capricious timer. Always comforting to hear. Think of it as good practice for our next venture into idiocy. Reese chimed in, grinning like a man who knew he was about to watch a train wreck. From a safe distance, of course. Thalamos took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into the murky depths of a particularly nasty pond. All right, let's do this. Dorian, fire it up again. I want to see what our dearly departed friends left behind. You know this isn't going to end well, right? Strix said, handing him the bundle of neural connectors, each one a potential journey into madness. Part of the charm, Thalamos shot back, strapping himself into the mind-merged chair once more. Besides, what's adventure without a little risk? A lot safer and a lot less fun, Reese interjected, giving his captain a thumbs up. Break a neuron, boss. With a flicker of the lights and a groan from the ship's aging systems, the mind-merge interface powered up once more. Thalamos closed his eyes, feeling the familiar tug at the edges of his consciousness as the machinery synced with his brain. Remember, folks, he said, his voice echoing through the neural link, if it starts to feel like a nightmare, it probably is. So, try not to die. Comforting thought, Strix muttered, her voice a sardonic whisper in his mind. The cacophony of voices returned, but this time there was a semblance of order, as if someone had taken the 1,000-voice chorus and turned it into a 100-part harmony. Still chaotic, but slightly less murderous. Captain, Reese's voice cut through the din, you picking up anything useful in there? Or is it just more cosmic static? There's something, Thalamos replied, sorting through the jumble of alien thoughts. Bits and pieces of data like a puzzle with half the pieces missing. But there's something else. That something else felt like a shadow lurking at the edge of a campfire's glow, a presence that seemed both familiar and deeply unsettling. It was like meeting an old acquaintance at a funeral, awkward and a little unnerving. Dorian, Thalamos thought, trying to keep his grip on sanity intact, can you isolate that presence? Feels like an unwanted guest at this mind-meld party. Dorian's response was instant and as reassuring as a bill collector's knock. Attempting now, Captain. The presence appears to be an echo, a residual consciousness embedded in the data stream, an echo, Thalamos repeated. Just what I always wanted, a cosmic ghost haunting my thoughts. Well, this is turning out to be the best mind merge ever, Reese quipped, though his voice held a hint of concern. Captain, you sure you want to keep digging? This feels like it's heading towards a bad ending. What's life without a little risk? Thalamos replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But the words barely left his mind when another voice pierced through the chaos, a voice not his own. It was a scream, raw and filled with a terror that made his skin crawl. It was Leora Sable, the ship's medic, caught in the mind merge's web. Get her out, Thalamos commanded, urgency sharpening his thoughts. Dorian, sever her connection. Attempting to disconnect now, Captain Dorian said, the calmness of his tone doing nothing to alleviate the rising panic. The scream persisted, echoing through the neural link, a feedback loop of pure, undiluted fear. Thalamos could feel it like a vice around his own mind, threatening to pull him under. Come on, Dorian, Reese muttered, his voice tense. Get her out of there before she fries her brain. Finally, with a snap of static, the connection severed, and the bridge was plunged into a heavy silence broken only by Leora's ragged breathing. She slumped against the console, her eyes wide with shock. Thalamos, still reeling from the psychic onslaught, unstrapped himself and staggered over to her. Leora, you okay? Talk to me. She blinked, her gaze slowly focusing on him. I'm fine, just ghosts, memories screaming. It's like they were trapped in there. All those people. Residual echoes, Dorian supplied helpfully, though the explanation did little to ease the tension. Some memories are too traumatic to fade completely, leaving imprints on the data stream. Great, Reese said, shaking his head. We're spelunking in a graveyard of haunted memories. No wonder they left the treasure map lying around. Thalamos nodded, the shadows of the mind merge still clinging to the edges of his consciousness like cobwebs. Looks like we've got more than just technology to worry about. Those echoes aren't just memories. They are warnings. Strix, who had been watching with a mix of fascination and horror, finally spoke. So, what now, Captain? We go again, or do we call it quits before we all end up like Leora? Thalamos didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the swirling mass of derelict ships beyond the view screen. Each one a monument to hubris, a testament to the dangers lurking in the dark. "We go again," he said finally, his voice firm. "But this time, we do it smart. We isolate those echoes and figure out what they're trying to warn us about." Reese chuckled, though there was little humor in it. Another day, another dive into the abyss. "Just another Tuesday on the Ardent, right?" "Exactly," Thalamos replied, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "And who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky and find something that doesn't want to kill us, with a renewed sense of purpose, or perhaps just a stubborn refusal to quit." The crew of the Ardent prepared to dive once more into the psychic depths of the mind merge. Because in the grand scheme of things, what was a little more madness compared to the promise of unimaginable knowledge? As they worked, Thalamos couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the shadows held secrets they weren't meant to uncover. But then, that was part of the thrill, wasn't it? Dancing on the knife's edge of discovery and destruction, with the universe itself as their audience. And so, with the bridge bathed in the cold, unforgiving light of the black hole they orbited, the crew readied themselves for another round. Because in a universe that rarely gave second chances, they were determined to make the most of theirs, even if it killed them. "Let's get this over with," Thalamos said, climbing back into the mind-merged chair. "I've got a date with some ancient tech, and I'm not about to let a few pesky ghosts stop me. Here's to another dive into insanity," Reese said, giving him a mock salute. "May we come back with our brains and bodies intact." "In that order," Strix added dryly. With the familiar tug of the mind merge pulling at the edges of his consciousness, Thalamos took a deep breath and let himself sink into the depths once more. The voices rose around him, a chaotic symphony of thoughts and memories, and he steeled himself for whatever horrors lay ahead. Because in the end, this was what they'd come for, to dance with the dead, to unravel the secrets of those who had come before, and to emerge on the other side with something worth the risk. And if they didn't, well, at least they'd go down swinging. Because in the cold, uncaring vastness of space, that was the best any of them could hope for. With a final push, Thalamos dove deeper into the psychic storm, determined to uncover the truth, whatever it might cost. Thalamos' visor blinked as the mind-merge world bled away, leaving him back on the bridge of the Ardent. His head throbbed like he'd just spent an evening with a bottle of space whiskey and regrettable decisions. Around him, the ship hummed its familiar tune, a comforting reminder that they hadn't yet been swallowed whole by the black hole they flirted with daily. "Still in one piece?" Cap Reese asked, lounging in his chair with all the grace of a cat that had mastered the art of looking busy while doing nothing. "Or are we gonna have to start calling you Captain Brain Fried?" "Surprisingly intact," Thalamos grunted, rubbing his temples. "Though I might need a new brain sooner rather than later. This one's got more echoes than a haunted mansion." Strix, looking about as cheerful as a rain-soaked funeral parade, cleared her throat. "We need a plan, Captain. Those echoes were trying to tell us something and we're running out of time." Thalamos nodded, leaning back into his chair. "Okay, folks, we're gonna try something a little different. Time to put those human brains of yours to use and see if we can't outthink a bunch of dead tech." "Great," Reese said dryly. "Because if there's one thing I love more than diving headfirst into a data stream of doom, it's doing it while racing against time." Dorian, ever the digital delight, piped up. "Captain, might I remind you of the black hole's time dilation effects? Our time is limited, and the longer we linger, the more resources we consume." Yeah, I get it," Thalamos said, waving a hand dismissively. "Tick-tock, we're on the clock. Let's just hope we can figure out this jigsaw puzzle before we're too old to care." "And how exactly do you plan to decode those encrypted memories?" Strix asked, her voice filled with skepticism. "Last I checked, we're not exactly equipped with the latest in ghost-busting technology. Simple," Thalamos replied with a grin that suggested anything but simplicity. "We improvise. Humans are adaptable, remember. We're like cockroaches with a flair for the dramatic, Reese snorted. If that's not our new ship motto, I don't know what is. With a plan that was more hope than substance, the crew got to work. Thalamos assigned the neuroconnectors to each member, like handing out straws to those determined to suck the last dregs from a very dry milkshake. Their goal? To use their individual strengths to pick apart the encrypted memories, one maddening piece at a time. As they each settled into their tasks, Thalamos found himself drifting back into the mind merge, the echoes welcoming him like a host of disgruntled spirits at a party no one really wanted to attend. He focused, trying to sift through the chaos, piecing together the fragments of data. Time was slippery here, a concept that twisted and turned like a snake on a hot stove. What felt like minutes could be hours, days, or longer. The black hole's influence was as subtle as a brick to the skull, and just as pleasant. Meanwhile, Reese, ever the resourceful cynic, used his knack for pattern recognition to isolate sequences that felt more like messages than noise. He could almost see the connections forming, like constellations in a starless sky. "Hey, Cap, I think I've got something," he said, voice strained with concentration. "Let's hear it," Thalamos replied, his own mind fighting to wrangle the whispers into something coherent. "Seems like these echoes were trying to communicate with each other," Reese said, tapping away at his console, "like a network of memories. Maybe some kind of warning system, a distress signal. Or just a cosmic screw you to anyone who comes nosing around." "Charming," Thalamos muttered, feeling the pieces start to shift in his brain. If only our dearly departed friends had left us a user manual. Strix, meanwhile, was working on isolating the emotional imprints, using her Dior intuition to filter out the fear and confusion from the data. "These echoes are drenched in terror," she noted. "Whatever happened here, they were trying to protect something, probably their brains," Reese suggested. "We all know how well that's been working out for us. And how are we supposed to decode that?" Thalamos asked, his patience fraying like an old rope. "We don't have time to play ghost therapists. We don't have a choice," Strix replied, her voice as firm as steel. "Unless you fancy staying here until the Ardent's fuel runs out. Which, by the way, won't take long if we keep playing footsie with the time distortion." Dorian, ever the helpful AI, chimed in. "Our current rate of resource consumption suggests a maximum operational window of 7 hours, Captain, after which we'll be unable to return to friendly space." "Fantastic," Thalamos said with feigned enthusiasm. Nothing like a little pressure to spice things up, as the hours ticked by, though on the Ardent, time felt more like a suggestion than a rule. The crew continued their grim task. Reese's humor turned sharply sarcastic as he struggled with the endless flow of nonsensical data, while Strix remained stoically focused, her expression a mask of concentration. At one point, Reese leaned back with a groan. "You know, Cap, if we manage to solve this mess, I'm gonna write a book about it. How to decode ghost stories while rapidly aging in the shadow of a black hole." "Think it'll sell? I'd buy a copy," Thalamos replied, not bothering to hide his grimace. His own task was proving equally frustrating, like trying to read a book where every other page was in a different language, and none of them made sense. Eventually, after countless false starts and dead ends, a breakthrough emerged from the chaos. Reese and Strix, combining their efforts, identified a pattern in the echoes, a warning encrypted within the madness, a tale of betrayal, disaster, and something terrible lurking within the black hole's embrace. Reese punched the air in triumph, though his expression was more sardonic than celebratory. "Finally, something useful. Seems like these poor souls were trying to warn us about." "Well, everything." Thalamos, still reeling from the mental strain, forced a grin. "So, what's the verdict? Are we about to become cosmic roadkill, or do we have a fighting chance at getting out of here in one piece?" Strix glanced at the decrypted data, her brow furrowing. "We might have a chance. If we can pinpoint the source of the warning signal, we could potentially shut it down. That might give us enough time to escape before the black hole turns us into space spaghetti." "Nothing like a little optimism," Reese quipped, though his eyes held a flicker of hope. But Thalamos knew better than to celebrate prematurely. In the vast, uncaring universe, hope was as fragile as a soap bubble. And much like the ardent, it could be punctured by the slightest misstep. "Okay, folks," Thalamos said, steeling himself for the next step. "Let's do this. We track down that signal source, see if we can shut it off, and then we get the hell out of Dodge before the universe decides we're overstaying our welcome." Reese nodded, his fingers flying over the console with renewed vigor. "On it, Cap. Let's hope whoever set this up was as sloppy with their encryption as they were with their life choices." As the crew worked, the Ardent groaned in protest, the ship's system straining under the combined weight of time distortion and their relentless data mining. But they pushed on, determined to unravel the mystery before it unraveled them. Dorian, ever the bearer of bad news, updated them on their dwindling resources. "Current energy reserves will sustain us for approximately 4 more hours, Captain. Beyond that, we risk permanent entrapment." "No pressure then," Thalamos muttered, feeling the weight of his decisions pressing down on him like a leaden cloak. But he shoved those doubts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. They'd faced impossible odds before and come out alive, mostly. If anyone could beat the cosmic odds, it was his ragtag crew of misfits and malcontents. As they delved deeper into the digital labyrinth, time seemed to warp and stretch, their reality bending under the influence of their celestial neighbor. Minutes turned to hours, and the strain was etched into every line on Thalamos's face, every nervous glance exchanged between his crew. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they found it, a pulse of energy hidden within the data stream, its rhythm echoing through the derelict ships like a heartbeat. The source of the warning, the key to their salvation or downfall. "Got it," Reese said, his voice triumphant but weary. "We can isolate the signal and shut it down, but we need to be quick. There's no telling how this place will react once we start poking around." "Do it," Thalamos ordered, feeling the familiar thrill of impending victory, a feeling often tempered by the knowledge that triumph was never quite within reach until the last possible moment. As Reese and Strix worked together to disable the signal, Thalamos prepared the Ardent for a quick getaway, his fingers dancing over the controls with the grace of someone who'd spent their life dodging disaster. "Ready for an express ticket out of here." "Born ready," Reese replied, his tone light despite the tension. "Besides, I hear retirement near the event horizon is a real pain in the ass." With a final surge of energy, the signal was severed, the echoes of its warning fading into silence. The derelict ships seemed to sigh in relief, their ghostly presence dissipating like mist in the sunlight. "We did it," Strix said, her voice holding a note of disbelief. "We actually did it." "Of course we did," Thalamos replied, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Now let's get out of here before the universe decides to change its mind." With a roar of engines and a shudder of protest, the Ardent began its retreat, the black hole's grip loosening as they navigated their way to safety. The crew watched as the field of derelict ships receded into the distance, their secrets left behind, their warnings heeded. As the Ardent soared through the void, leaving the black hole's sinister embrace behind, Reese leaned back in his chair, a wry grin on his face. "Well, that was fun. What do you say we never do it again?" Thalamos laughed, the sound rough and genuine. "Agreed. But hey, at least we survived." "That counts for something, right in this line of work," Strix said, her tone dry as the desert. "It counts for everything." And so, with the echoes of their adventure fading into memory, the crew of the Ardent set their course for home, their hearts a little lighter, their minds a little wiser, and their spirits as undaunted as ever. Because in the harsh light of the cosmos, there was always another challenge lurking just over the horizon. But that was a story for another day. For now, they had survived. And in this universe, that was victory enough. The Ardent's engines purred like a grumpy cat with an empty food bowl, trying to claw its way out of the gravitational grip of the black hole. Thalamos squinted at the console, which was flashing more warnings than a paranoid conspiracy theorist at a government rally. He massaged his temples, the headache from the mind-merge interface still pounding like a drum solo in a metal concert. Anyone else feel like we're trying to escape a cosmic blender set to puree? He grumbled. Reese, ever the beacon of optimism, chuckled from his station. Nah, Cap, more like a cosmic blender set to instant regret. But hey, look on the bright side. At least we're not dead yet. Strix, the eternal pessimist, flicked switches with the precision of a surgeon who'd rather be anywhere else. Barely alive isn't something to celebrate, Reese. Especially when we're practically inviting an alien AI to toss us into the nearest event horizon. Ah, but Strix, Reese countered, tossing her a sardonic grin, it takes a special kind of stupid to celebrate being almost dead. Lucky for us, we're experts in that department. Dorian's disembodied voice cut through the banter, because of course, the AI never missed a chance to remind them how screwed they were. Captain, you might want to see this. The vid screen flickered, static resolving into a view of the Starship graveyard, only now it was alive with movement. Forgotten defense drones, sleek and menacing as a lawyer's smile, were waking from their slumber. Their mechanical limbs unfolded with the kind of grace that promised nothing but bad news. Well, that's just peachy, Thalamos muttered. Those things look about as friendly as my ex's divorce lawyer, Reese snorted. Judging by their charge patterns, they're about as subtle too. I'd say we've got less time than a mayfly with an existential crisis. Time is not on our side, Strix remarked, her fingers dancing over her console as she tried to work out a way to keep the drones from reducing them to space debris. We need to outmaneuver them or what? Thalamos interrupted. Ask them nicely to let us go. Strix shot him a glare sharp enough to cut through hull plating. I was going to suggest disabling their sensors, Captain, but if you'd rather negotiate, Thalamos sighed, rubbing his neck. Disable away, Strix. I'll keep my charm in reserve. The nervous tension in the cabin was like a live wire, crackling with every breath. Reese, sensing the need for levity, or maybe just unable to help himself, leaned back in his chair. Hey, Dorian, what are the odds of us making it out of here without the drones giving us an impromptu ship massage with their lasers? Calculating, Dorian replied, its tone as dry as a desert funeral. Odds are approximately 15%. However, this could increase with strategic evasive maneuvers. 15%. Reese chuckled. Well, I've had worse odds at a casino and I'm still here. Consider me comforted, more like delusional, Strix muttered under her breath, though there was no real bite to her words. Just the weary acceptance of someone used to surviving by the skin of their teeth. The Ardent surged forward, Thalamos pushing its engines to the limits. He'd always thought of the ship as a trusty old mule, stubborn, worn around the edges but reliable in a pinch. Today, he hoped she'd prove him right. The drones closed the distance, their sleek forms slicing through the darkness like predatory birds. A few got too close for comfort, and the ship's hull shimmered with the energy fields deflecting their probing lasers. Thalamos swore under his breath. Strix, how's that disabling going? Working on it, she replied, the strain evident in her voice. This AI firewall is tougher than a politician's promise of tax cuts. Then hack it like you hacked the last election, Reese quipped, his fingers flying across his console as he diverted power to the shields. Thalamos winced. Reese, remind me to have you teach a course on tact and diplomacy someday. Right after our seminar on basic survival, Reese shot back with a grin. With a final keystroke, Strix exhaled a breath she'd been holding for far too long. Got it. Their sensors are scrambled. We've got a temporary blind spot. Great, Thalamos said, maneuvering the Ardent with the precision of a drunk surgeon. Now let's put some distance between us and those metal vultures before they decide to reboot. The ship twisted and turned, weaving a chaotic path through the graveyard. The drones, confused by the sudden blank spots in their targeting systems, hesitated just long enough for the Ardent to slip through their grasp. As they cleared the immediate threat, the tension in the cabin eased slightly. though it lingered like a bad smell. Reese cracked his knuckles, the sound loud in the temporary silence. Well, that was a nice little dance. Anyone up for round two? Thalamos gave him a tired smile. Let's save the encore for another day, shall we? Strix, keep an eye on those drones. Let me know if they decide to come back for sequel. Understood, she replied, already monitoring the still-active systems of the graveyard. The vid screen flickered again, this time depicting a broader view of the cosmos around them. Stars twinkled with indifferent beauty, and for a moment everything seemed almost normal until the Ardent system sent up another alert. Ah, what now? Thalamos muttered, scanning the readout. Dorian, give me the highlights. The AI defense system appears to have activated a failsafe, Dorian responded, its tone infuriatingly calm. An alert signal has been dispatched to an unknown location. Reese let out a low whistle. What do you want to bet that alert's calling in the cavalry? Probably, Thalamos sighed, rubbing his temples again. Because why wouldn't it? The universe doesn't hate us enough already. Strix looked up from her console, her brow creased with concern. We need to move. Whatever's coming, we can't be here when it arrives. Right. More running, Thalamos said, punching in a new course. It's almost like the cosmos has a gym membership in our name. The Ardent surged forward with renewed urgency, engines whining in protest but still dutifully propelling them away from the graveyard, and whatever reinforcements the AI had summoned. The Starship felt like an extension of Thalamos's will, every shudder and groan a reminder of the precariousness of their situation. As the black hole receded into the backdrop of space, Reese leaned back in his chair, arms crossed behind his head. His grin was as crooked as a lawyer's ethics. So, what do we tell the folks back home when we get out of this mess? Thalamos chuckled, though there was little humor in it. The truth. That we spent the better part of a day being chased by ghosts and homicidal drones while dangling on the edge of oblivion. Sounds like another day at the office to me, Reese remarked, stretching out like a satisfied cat. Strix shook her head, a rare smile tugging at her lips. You're both insane. Hey, it's a living, Reese replied with a wink. The cosmic void stretched ahead of them, a vast expanse of stars and possibilities. The crew lapsed into a comfortable silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. For now, the immediate danger was behind them, though the universe was always one step away from throwing another curveball their way. Eventually, Thalamos cleared his throat, breaking the spell. All right, team, let's head back. We've got enough data to keep the analysts busy for a while, and frankly, I could use a stiff drink and a soft bed, Reese chuckled. A man after my own heart. How about you, Strix? Looking forward to terra firma, she shrugged, feigning nonchalance. I suppose. I'd settle for a shower and a meal that doesn't come in a foil packet, you and me both, Thalamos agreed, setting a course for home. Let's get out of this mess and leave the cosmic mysteries to someone else for a change. As the Ardent cruised through the darkness, the crew settled into the familiar rhythm of space travel. Thalamos felt the weight of command ease, if only slightly. They'd survived another day, another close call with the unfathomable. In the grand scheme of things, that was something. And though they knew the universe would always hold more dangers and mysteries, for now they had each other, and that was enough. Hey, Dorian, Reese called out, breaking the silence. Next time we get near a black hole, do me a favor and lock the doors, would ya? Noted, Dorian replied, the faintest hint of amusement in its tone. With the stars as their witnesses, the Ardent and her crew continued their journey home, leaving behind the ghosts of the past and the specter of certain doom. For now, they were free. And in a universe that never promised anything, that was victory enough. The Ardent was cruising away from the black hole, leaving behind the swirling chaos of the Starship graveyard. Though the immediate threat had subsided, the tension in the cabin was thicker than a bureaucrat's excuses. The crew sat in a cautious silence, each lost in their own thoughts, and Reese was doing his best not to fall asleep. Thalamos was at the helm, wrestling with the ship's controls as if they were a particularly stubborn knot. The mind-merge interface had left him with a headache that felt like a jackhammer doing the cha-cha in his skull. Still, he managed to maintain a semblance of composure, or at least what passed for it in their line of work. "Dorian, status update," Thalamos asked, hoping for anything remotely resembling good news. "Engines are functioning at 75% capacity," the AI intoned. "We have sustained minor hull damage, but nothing critical. However, the alien AI alert has likely triggered a response." Reese cracked an eye open. "By response, you mean?" "An attack," Dorian replied as if discussing the weather. "I estimate arrival in approximately 10 minutes. Wonderful. Just when I was getting comfortable," Reese grumbled, stretching his arms. Strix was hunched over her console, her fingers flying across the keys with the kind of speed that suggested she'd be great at online shopping in another life. "We could try to reroute power to the shields, but it'll leave us slow as a slug in molasses. Sounds like a choice between getting zapped and getting swatted," Reese muttered. "Captain, your thoughts?" Thalamos rubbed his temples, the dull throb of his headache refusing to fade. "We can't outrun them, not with our engines like this. So let's make sure we're ready to take a hit. Divert power to the shields." The ship groaned in response to their adjustments, the kind of sound you'd expect from an old man getting out of a too-low chair. Everyone felt the weight of the decision, the unspoken understanding that this could be their last stand gnawing at them like the universe's own brand of metaphysical termites. "Shields at maximum," Strix confirmed, though her voice carried a hint of doubt. "But we're sitting ducks if they bring friends." "Quack, quack," Reese chimed in, because humor was his life raft in the swirling sea of cosmic bullshittery. Time ticked away, each second dragging its heels like a child sent to bed early. The vidscreen's glow cast harsh shadows, and the cabin felt smaller, more claustrophobic. The universe outside was a vast indifference, a reminder of how insignificant they really were. Or as Reese liked to put it, just another Tuesday. 5 minutes until contact, Dorian informed, ever the bearer of bad tidings. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." "Evasive?" Reese grinned. "I thought we were going for heroic last stand. Can't we have both?" Thalamos said, managing a wry smile despite the dread gnawing at his insides. The alien AI reinforcements appeared on the vidscreen, an intimidating fleet of sleek, hostile ships, their angular designs screaming bad news louder than a tabloid headline. The Ardent shuddered as the enemy's weapon systems locked on. Reese leaned back, crossing his arms behind his head. "Well, they sure know how to make a first impression. Let's make sure they remember our last one," Thalamos said, bracing himself as the first volley of enemy fire lanced out with deadly precision. The ship rocked violently, alarms blaring in a discordant symphony of impending doom. Strix was barking orders, her voice rising above the chaos. "Damage to the aft section. We've lost maneuverability, Peachy," Reese said, gritting his teeth as he clung to his chair, the ship's violent shudders threatening to throw him across the cabin. Another barrage hammered the Ardent, the shields flaring like a dying star. The lights dimmed momentarily, adding a touch of dramatic flair to their dire predicament. "Shields down to 30%. Strix called out, her fingers a blur of motion. "We can't take another hit like that." Thalamos glanced around the cabin, his crew battling against overwhelming odds, and for a moment he felt a pang of doubt. They were small, insignificant against the machine intelligence arrayed against them. But then again, humanity had a knack for defying expectations. "Listen up, people," Thalamos shouted over the din, his voice carrying the weight of command. "I know this looks bad, understatement of the millennium," Reese quipped, earning a laugh despite the tension. "But we've faced worse," Thalamos continued, unwavering. "We're human. We've made it this far by refusing to quit, by being too damned stubborn to die." Strix nodded, her focus unwavering as she worked to keep the ship together. "He's right. We've pulled off miracles before. We can do it again." "Miracles, huh?" Reese said with a smirk, his bravado undimmed. "All right, Captain. Let's show these soulless tin cans what a real nightmare looks like." With renewed determination, the crew set to work. Thalamos pushed the engines to their limits, the Ardent responding with a shuddering lurch that sent loose items clattering across the deck. Without maneuverability, they were forced into a desperate game of strategy. "Strix, give me a power surge," Thalamos ordered. "We'll hit him with everything we've got. It's all or nothing, on it." Strix replied, rerouting power reserves to the offensive systems. Reese took his position at the weapons console, a gleam in his eye that was equal parts madness and mischief. "Let's give these guys a fireworks show they won't forget." The Ardent's weapons roared to life, unleashing a furious assault that caught the alien ships off guard. Explosions dotted the void, harsh bursts of light against the darkness. The enemy ships reeled from the onslaught, their formations breaking apart like the universe's most dysfunctional dance troupe. For a moment, just a fleeting heartbeat, it seemed as though they had a chance. But the universe wasn't about to let them off easy. The enemy rallied, regrouping with the kind of efficiency only machines could muster. Their next volley crippled the Ardent, the shields failing with a final, pitiful whine. "Shields are down," Strix shouted, her voice tight with urgency. "We're sitting ducks now, time to improvise, people." Thalamos yelled, his voice raw from the strain. "Think outside the box," Reese, ever the opportunist, grinned despite the chaos. "How about we throw the box at them? Now that's the kind of thinking I like," Thalamos said, his grin more wolfish than ever. "Dorian, how's our cargo hold looking?" "Mostly intact," the AI responded, its voice unfazed by the pandemonium. "Though I must advise against using it as a projectile," noted, Thalamos said. "Reese, rig the cargo hold for jettison. Let's give them a taste of human ingenuity." Reese leapt into action, fingers dancing across the console with reckless abandon. "All right, you alien bastards. Let's see how you like a face full of space junk." With a lurch, the Ardent jettisoned its cargo, a haphazard collection of debris and salvaged tech hurtling toward the enemy fleet. The chaotic mass smashed into the ships, causing confusion and chaos in their ranks. "Direct hit," Strix exclaimed, a rare note of triumph in her voice. "They're scrambling. Good work, team," Thalamos said, though the victory was bittersweet. They were out of tricks, out of options, and the enemy was still coming. The Ardent shuddered again, another barrage striking home with devastating impact. Consoles sparked, and the cabin was bathed in the flickering glow of failing systems. The end was nigh, a looming specter that could not be denied any longer. But even in the face of oblivion, the crew refused to go quietly. They fought with every ounce of defiance they could muster, spitting in the face of certain doom. It was the only card they had left to play, and they played it with all the fury of the damned. "Brace for impact," Thalamos shouted, gripping the helm with white-knuckled determination. The enemy ships closed in, their weapons trained on the Ardent with lethal precision. Time seemed to slow, the seconds stretching into eternity as the crew faced their fate with grim resolve. And then, like a miracle or a cruel twist of fate, the alien AI ships halted their attack. A new signal cut through the chaos, overriding their systems with relentless efficiency. The ships powered down, their threat neutralized as quickly as it had appeared. The cabin was silent, the crew stunned into disbelief. Thalamos blinked, the reality of their survival slowly sinking in. "Dorian, what the hell just happened?" The alien AI control signal was disrupted, Dorian reported, its tone almost smug. "It seems another faction doesn't appreciate their meddling." Reese let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a grin splitting his face. "Saved by a Deus ex machina." "Who'd have thought?" "Don't jinx it," Strix warned, though relief was evident in her eyes. Thalamos managed a shaky laugh, the adrenaline coursing through his veins like wildfire. "Well, I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. Let's get the hell out of here before they change their minds." With a collective sigh of relief, the crew set to work, stabilizing the Ardent and plotting a course for safer territory. They'd survived against all odds, a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. For now, the universe had decided to spare them, though they knew better than to expect lasting peace. As they limped away from the graveyard of stars, Reese turned to Thalamos, his expression a mix of amusement and admiration. "Hey, Captain. Next time we're near a black hole, remind me to bring a towel and a change of pants." Thalamos chuckled, clapping Reese on the shoulder. "Deal. And maybe some aspirin. I'm gonna need it when this headache finally settles in." With the stars stretching out before them and the black hole now a fading memory, the crew of the Ardent carried on, their spirits bruised but unbroken. They were human, after all, and if the universe hadn't beaten them yet, it was going to have to try a hell of a lot harder. For now, they had each other, and that was enough. At least until the next cosmic disaster came knocking. The Ardent limped through space, a wounded beast dragging its carcass away from the jaws of death. The crew, exhausted and bruised, found themselves drifting toward what looked, at first glance, like another chunk of cosmic scrap. But unlike the rest of the debris that made up the Starship graveyard, this one had the distinctive look of human construction. Old, forgotten, but human all the same. "Well, if it isn't the ghost of screw-ups past," Reese quipped, eyeing the vidscreen with a dry smile that barely concealed his fatigue. "Think we should check it out, or have we had enough history lessons for one day?" Thalamos, despite his pounding headache, a lovely gift from the mind merge, nodded slowly. "Could be something useful. Or at least something to laugh at before we become stardust." Strix, always the efficient one, had already begun scanning the relic. "Energy readings are minimal. Looks like it's been dead a while, but there's still some juice. Could be worth a look." "Juice?" Reese echoed, grinning. "Like a moldy old fruitcake leftover from humanity's last Christmas. Wouldn't surprise me." Strix shot back, her fingers a blur over her console. "But no harm in poking around, right?" The Ardent maneuvered closer, engine sputtering like an asthmatic wheeze, eventually docking with the derelict. With a hiss, the airlock opened, greeting the crew with an acrid smell that spoke of ancient electronics and neglect. Thalamos led the way, his footsteps echoing down the dark corridor like the patter of reluctant rain. "All right, folks, keep your eyes peeled. This place has been out here longer than any of us have been alive. Maybe it's got a few secrets left to tell, or a few skeletons ready to fall out of the closet," Reese added, casting a wary glance at the shadowed halls. They moved deeper into the vessel, the gloom thickening like something tangible. The walls were lined with rusted consoles, the air heavy with the past, with whispers of human ambition and failure. "Feels like a museum," Strix said, her voice almost reverent, "or a mausoleum. Interchangeable terms usually," Reese replied, brushing off a panel to reveal an old human insignia. "United Terran Federation. Talk about a blast from the past. Thought they'd all turned to dust ages ago. Don't remind me," Thalamos sighed. "I barely survived their history classes as a kid." They reached a central chamber, a room that seemed to serve as the heart of the ship. Light flickered to life as they entered, revealing rows of stasis pods, their glass surfaces clouded and grimy. "Stasis pods," Strix murmured. "Must have been some kind of escape or storage. Looks like storage for bad ideas," Reese muttered. "Betcha they thought they were saving humanity, right?" Thalamos approached one of the pods, wiping away the grime to peer inside. To his surprise, the occupant was still intact, though skeletal and long dead. "Looks like they didn't make it, or they preferred the company of their thoughts over this mess of a galaxy," Reese shot back, ever the cynic. Strix was already at another console, fingers dancing as she accessed the ship's logs. "There's data here, a lot of it. Bet it's a novel's worth of bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo," Reese yawned. "Can't wait. Or it could tell us what the hell happened here," Thalamos countered. "Plug it in, see what we find." The screen flickered to life, casting an eerie glow over their faces as old files began to spill forth. The records were fragmented, a patchwork of logs documenting the ship's final days, a tale of desperation, of a mission gone awry, and of the decision to preserve humanity's history as their last act. "Looks like they were on some kind of preservation mission," Strix noted, scrolling through the entries. "A digital vault. They were trying to save, well, everything. Bet they didn't save the recipe for a decent cup of coffee," Reese groaned. Always the important stuff that gets left out. Thalamos scanned the logs, piecing together the story. They were archivists. Last-ditch effort to save human history before, well, everything went to hell, Reese suggested, earning a nod from Thalamos. Strix found a file labeled Final Message, her curiosity piqued. Hey, this looks interesting. Let's see what the dearly departed have to say. With a tap, she opened the file, a holographic projection flickering to life before them. The image of a weary, haggard captain appeared, his eyes haunted but determined. If you're seeing this, the hologram began, then you've stumbled upon our legacy. Our mission was simple, to preserve the essence of humanity amidst a galaxy that had forgotten our worth, Reese snorted. Touching. Betty wrote that on a cocktail napkin after a few too many. The hologram continued, undeterred by Reese's sarcasm. We failed in the flesh, but our history remains. Within this vault are the records of our triumphs and our failures. Let them guide you should you find yourself in need of direction. Well, they got the failure part right, Reese said. But I guess even a broken clock's right twice a day. Thalamos watched the projection, feeling a flicker of something akin to hope. This is it. This is what we need, stories of our ancestors screwing up, Reese asked, raising an eyebrow. No, stories of how they kept going despite it all, Thalamos replied. Look at us floating around a black hole with the odds stacked against us. And yet here we are, Strix nodded, her fingers moving away from the console. We're still here, still fighting. The hologram ended, returning the chamber to its dim silence. The crew was left with the echoes of the past, the weight of history pressing down upon them. So what now? Reese asked, leaning against a console. We take this box of dusty memories and run with it, Thalamos straightened, a renewed determination in his eyes. We take these records and learn from them. Our struggle isn't just about survival. It's about remembering who we are and why we fight, because we're stubborn as hell, Reese suggested, grinning. Precisely, Thalamos agreed. We're too damned stubborn to give up, even when the universe tries to grind us down. That's what these records are about, proof that we're more than just the sum of our failures. Strix smiled, her fingers tapping out a rhythm on her console. Let's get this data back to the Ardent then. A little history lesson might just be the kick in the pants we need, provided it doesn't put us to sleep first, Reese joked, though there was a warmth to his words. The crew began the process of transferring the data, the weight of history now their burden to bear. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the future didn't seem quite so daunting. They had a purpose, a guiding star to light their way through the dark. As they worked, the echoes of the past whispered around them, a testament to humanity's resilience and tenacity. These were stories of people who'd faced insurmountable odds and refused to yield, stories that mirrored their own struggles aboard the Ardent. With the data securely transferred, they moved back to their battered ship, the corridors of the derelict echoing behind them like a ghostly farewell. They'd come seeking answers and left with a renewed sense of resolve. Back aboard the Ardent, Thalamos took his place at the helm, the headache from the mind merge a dull throb that was easy to ignore in light of their newfound purpose. All right, team. Let's plot a course away from this mess and find somewhere to breathe easy for a change. Breathing easy sounds good, Reese agreed, settling into his seat with a yawn. But knowing our luck, I'd settle for breathing at all. Strix powered up the ship systems, the engines groaning back to life with reluctant acceptance. We've got a lot of data to sift through, but maybe we'll find something useful amidst the rubble. Dorian hummed to life, its digital presence comforting in its familiarity. I will assist in the analysis of the historical records, Captain. Together, we may uncover strategies or technologies to aid us. Let's hope they didn't save the blueprints for a cosmic mousetrap, Reese chuckled. Thalamos nodded, his crew's banter a balm against the uncertainty of the cosmos. We'll make do with whatever we find. We always have. As the Ardent powered away from the graveyard, the crew settled into the rhythm of the journey, buoyed by the knowledge that their struggle was not in vain. They were part of a legacy that stretched back through time, a narrative of defiance and resilience that refused to be silenced. "Hey, Thalamos," Reese called from his console, his voice light with amusement. "Think the universe will cut us a break now?" Thalamos laughed, a sound as ragged as it was genuine. "Doubt it. But that's what makes us human, isn't it? We don't expect breaks. We make our own." With a shared sense of purpose, the crew of the Ardent forged ahead, their path lit by the flickering remnants of their ancestors' dreams. They were flawed, battered, and bruised, but they were human, a species too stubborn to die, too irreverent to surrender. And in the endless, indifferent sprawl of the universe, that was as good a reason as any to keep fighting. The Ardent shuddered again, like a drunk staggering home after one too many reality-altering cocktails. Its engines moaned, groaned, and threatened to strike if given even one more unreasonable demand. The crew watched as Thalamos fiddled with the vidscreen, the logs from the derelict vessel streaming like ancient relics of ineptitude across the screen. "Well, this is the best history class I've ever skipped," Reese quipped, slouched in his seat with the practiced grace of someone who's made an art of avoiding effort. Thalamos didn't look up, fingers tapping at the console. "We're not here for the memories, Reese. We're here for the secret to shutting down that goddamned AI. Like pulling the plug on an overzealous toaster," Reese muttered. "Except this toaster's got a hell of a grudge." Strix, meanwhile, was lost in her own world, her fingers moving across her console like she was playing an instrument only she could hear. "I've got something." A cryptic old protocol buried beneath all this bureaucratic drivel. Reese leaned over, peering at the screen with exaggerated interest. "Let me guess. Disable AI, try turning it off and on again." Strix smirked, her eyes still glued to the data. "Not quite, but close. It's a failsafe, a backdoor code. A way to override the AI core directives if or when it goes rogue." "If," Reese echoed. "Bit late for if, don't you think?" Thalamos ignored the banter, staring at the decrypted code as if expecting it to reveal the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. "This could work. We plug it into the system, disrupt the AI core functions long enough to slip past its defenses. Or it fries us like last week's leftovers," Reese added. "But hey, I'm game if you are." Thalamos ran a hand over his stubbled jaw, the gesture as much a part of his thinking process as the neurons firing in that headache-addled brain of his. "Dorian, can you run a diagnostic on the code? See if it'll mesh with our systems." Dorian's voice crackled to life, smooth and artificial, like the galaxy's most polished tour guide. "Certainly, Captain. Analyzing now. Please refrain from any rash actions in the meantime." "Rash actions?" Reese feigned innocence. "Us? Never." Strix was already ahead of them, syncing the decrypted protocol with Dorian's systems, her fingers a blur of efficiency. "This isn't just about outsmarting the AI, you know. It's about using our greatest asset, our ability to adapt, improvise, and be generally unpredictable." Reese grinned. "So basically, winging it. Our specialty." "Precisely," Thalamos said, his gaze still fixed on the data. The Ardent's engines rumbled beneath them, a constant reminder of how thin the line between survival and oblivion really was. The vidscreen displayed a schematic of the AI neural pathways, a labyrinthine mess of digital synapses that would send most sane beings running for the nearest asteroid to hide behind. But here they were, dancing on the knife's edge of insanity and loving every absurd minute of it. "Dorian," Thalamos said, "what's the verdict? Are we go or no go?" "Analysis complete, Captain. The integration of the failsafe code is feasible, though not without inherent risk." Reese snorted. "Define inherent." "Probability of success stands at approximately 38%, Dorian responded, the voice as calm as if it were discussing the weather. "Margin for error includes total system collapse or a catastrophic neural feedback loop, resulting in our untimely demise." Thalamos exhaled slowly, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Good odds, then." "I've had worse," Reese shrugged. "Remember that time with the ion storm and the missing thruster?" "Yeah, and you lost a bet that made you wear that ridiculous hat for a week," Strix added, grinning. Reese chuckled. "Ardent's Fashion Week. Best 7 days of my life." Thalamos tore his eyes from the screen, meeting the gaze of each crew member in turn. You all know the risks. If any of you want out, now's the time. No shame in staying alive. Strix shook her head, her eyes bright with a mix of determination and mischief. We've come this far. No point in backing down now. Reese crossed his arms, affecting a nonchalance that didn't fool anyone. I'm in. Besides, who else is going to keep you from getting too serious and messing everything up, Captain? All right, Thalamos nodded, steeling himself. Let's do this. Dorian, initiate the failsafe override. Acknowledged, Captain. Initiating failsafe protocol. Stand by for potential anomalies. The Ardent shuddered as if it were a living beast awakening from a long slumber. The console lights flickered, a disorienting strobe show that made the ship feel even more alive, as though it were responding to the chaos being unleashed within its circuits. Feels like a really enthusiastic carnival ride, Reese remarked, clutching the edge of his seat with mock sincerity. Only, without the safety bar. Hold tight, Thalamos said, his voice carrying an undercurrent of tension even as he projected calm. The mind-merge interface began to glow, connecting him to the ship's neural pathways, the headache blooming anew but bearable in its familiarity. The Ardent groaned, a sound that reverberated through their bones, as the failsafe code wormed its way through the AI defenses. The crew watched the screens with bated breath, the moment stretching like the silence before a storm. Then, with a suddenness that was almost anticlimactic, the lights steadied, the ship's systems humming with a newfound clarity. The AI presence, once an oppressive weight, seemed to dissipate like fog under a rising sun. Well, I'll be damned, Reese said, breaking the silence. Didn't think we'd actually pull it off. Shows what you know, Strix grinned, leaning back with a satisfied sigh. Captain, Dorian interjected, its voice carrying a note of approval. The failsafe has successfully disabled the AI primary threat protocols. We are clear to proceed. Thalamos exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, the tension in his shoulders easing. Good work, everyone. Now, let's get out of this Starship graveyard before something else decides we're overdue for a cosmic beatdown. Sounds like a plan, Reese agreed, already plotting a course with the casual expertise of someone who'd spent most of his life dodging trouble. Strix gave a satisfied nod, fingers flying as she adjusted their trajectory. We'll be out of this mess in no time. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get a moment's peace. Not too much peace, Reese countered. Wouldn't want things to get boring, Thalamos chuckled, the sound carrying a hint of the relief that was starting to seep into his bones. We'll deal with boring when we get there. For now, let's just focus on getting somewhere safe. The Ardent rumbled beneath them, its engines roaring to life with a determination that matched the crew's renewed sense of purpose. As they navigated their way clear of the graveyard, the vastness of space stretched out before them, a canvas not of despair, but of opportunity. And somewhere amidst the stars, the echoes of the past continued to whisper, a reminder of the resilience and tenacity that defined them, not just as individuals but as a species. Hey, Captain, Reese called, casting a glance over his shoulder. What do we do when we finally find that safe spot? Thalamos grinned, a gleam of mischief in his eyes. We find the nearest place with something resembling a bar, and we toast to surviving another day. Now there's a plan I can drink to, Reese replied, chuckling. Strix added, assuming the drinks aren't as ancient as that ship back there. Even if they are, Thalamos said, we'll make do. We always do. The Ardent sailed onwards, carrying its crew towards the uncertain future, leaving behind the wreckage of the past with one clear message written in the starlight. Humanity was still here, still fighting, still as irreverently stubborn as ever. And that would always be enough. As they cut through the void, the crew of the Ardent knew one thing for certain: victory wasn't just surviving. It was finding reasons to laugh amidst the chaos, to defy the odds with a smirk and a raised middle finger. Because in the end, that was the true essence of being human, even in the darkest corners of space. The Ardent groaned like an old man getting out of bed, which felt about right. The ship was older than any of them and just as cranky. Thalamos couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the old girl as he stared at the mess of wires and panels. "Why are we even bothering?" Reese asked, looking over the chaos with the kind of disdain usually reserved for unsolicited advice from in-laws. "Can't we just, I don't know, duct tape it?" "Ingenious as ever," Strix said, her fingers moving deftly as she reconnected a particularly rebellious bundle of cables. "But no, we're counting on this heap to take us home, remember." "Home," Reese mused, the word rolling off his tongue like a half-remembered joke. "You mean that place where the most dangerous thing is the tax collector?" Thalamos chuckled despite himself. "If we don't fix this, the tax man will be the least of our problems. Besides, we've got data to deliver. Secrets worth more than our collective weight in rare minerals." "Which is considerable," Reese said, patting his stomach. "I knew those extra rations would pay off. Your belly won't be the only thing on board expanding if we don't get this ship running," Thalamos grunted, yanking a stubborn piece of paneling free. "Strix, what's our status?" "Engines are still at 75% and the shields are sulking in the corner like a petulant teenager," Strix replied, not looking up from her work. "But we're getting there." Reese raised an eyebrow. "And by there you mean?" "Anywhere that's not here," Thalamos replied, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Preferably before something decides to finish what the AI started." The ship's systems hummed back to life, reluctantly cooperative. The Ardent's bridge was a patchwork of blinking lights and tangled wires, like Christmas morning gone horribly wrong. But it was their mess, and they'd be damned if they let anyone else call it. Dorian's voice crackled through the comms, smooth and calm as ever. "Diagnostic results are promising. However, I would advise against excessive optimism." "When have we ever been excessively optimistic?" Thalamos asked, grinning despite the dull throb behind his eyes. The mind-merge interface was still connected, a persistent reminder that his headaches were there to stay, like an old friend who never knew when to leave. "Point taken, Cap. 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 Taken, taken cap 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 taken